What happens when a billionaire quietly observes the quiet kindness of someone he never truly noticed before? And how does one ordinary act change two very different lives forever? Keep watching, because what you're about to see may stay with you for a long time. Clara Patrick, a junior customer service agent at Lawson & Company in Abuja, lived a simple life. Each evening after work, with whatever money remained in her purse, she visited the local market. There, she'd buy bread, food, anything she could afford, then walk to a familiar roadside where disabled people gathered, handing out what she had with a warm smile. Though she had little, Clara gave without hesitation. She wasn't looking for recognition or applause. Helping others was just part of who she was. Day after day, she returned to the same spot, quietly feeding those society had forgotten. And though she didn't realize it, someone had begun to notice. That very evening, Richard Lawson, the CEO of Lawson & Company, was stuck in traffic. His driver eased slowly through the usual congestion of the Abuja streets, and the city hummed with its regular noise. As they neared a familiar junction, something unusual caught his eye. A woman in a red shirt and black skirt moved through the crowd with purpose. He leaned forward, recognizing her face. It was Clara. There she was, an employee in his own company, carefully handing out food from a black nylon bag, moving from one disabled person to the next. She didn't rush, didn't seem distracted, didn't hesitate. Richard stared, struck by the contrast between the woman he knew from work, quiet, reserved, almost invisible, and the one before him now, full of gentle purpose. It stunned him. This was a woman who earned so little, yet gave so much. Richard had built his life around power, discipline, and ambition. Numbers made sense. Profits were measurable. But Clara's actions, simple, selfless, and unnoticed, touched something deeper in him. She wasn't rich, but she was richer than most in heart. His thoughts wrestled with what he'd just seen as his car crawled forward. That moment stayed with him. For the first time in years, something shifted inside. At the office, Clara remained her usual self, quiet, hard-working, almost invisible among louder colleagues. She never tried to draw attention, never played office politics. She came in, did her work, and left. Most of the time, people barely noticed her. But Richard did now. At first, she didn't realize it. She assumed it was just her imagination, but gradually, it became clear. He was watching her. During meetings, in the hallway, even in the cafeteria where she ate alone, his eyes would often find her. He began speaking to her. Casual questions, little observations, and she answered politely, still unsure why a man like him would notice someone like her. Whispers started circulating. Her colleagues gossiped, puzzled by the CEO's growing interest in someone so quiet. But Clara remained unaware. She simply continued doing her job, holding on to her routine. Then came a rainy evening. The clouds had opened wide earlier that day, soaking the city. Richard waited in his office for the rain to ease, intending to offer Clara a ride home. He figured she would have spent what little she had feeding others, as usual, and now might be cold or stranded. But when he stepped out, she was already gone. He had a strong feeling she had headed to that same roadside. Without hesitation, he drove there himself. The streets were damp and mostly quiet. The rain had driven many indoors. As he approached the junction, his eyes searched. And then he saw her, walking slowly, still holding that familiar bag of food. She moved from one person to the next, offering warm meals, her face calm and gentle despite the chill in the air. Richard pulled his car closer, rolled down the window, and called her name. She turned, startled. No one had ever offered her help before. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded and climbed into the car. The warmth of the vehicle wrapped around her like a blanket. They sat in silence at first, the sound of the engine the only thing between them. Richard looked at her, truly looked. She appeared tired, her face worn by the long day, yet peaceful. No bitterness. No complaints. He cleared his throat. "Could you tell me a little about yourself?" he asked gently. Clara looked out the window before replying. "I'm an only child. My parents retired and moved back to the village. I live here alone trying to survive." Richard listened, saying nothing. Her words stayed with him. Alone in the city, earning just enough to get by, yet she still found a way to help others. It humbled him. They drove quietly, a new understanding growing between them, unspoken yet strong. When they reached her street, Richard took in the surroundings. The neighborhood was modest. Old buildings lined the road. Simple homes where people made the most of what they had. It wasn't much, but there was dignity in it. Clara looked at him and smiled faintly, not knowing her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined, stopped in front of the modest home. "This is it," Clara said softly as she opened the car door. "Thank you, sir," she added, stepping out gently into the quiet evening. Richard sat still for a while, watching her walk towards the small house. Her pace was calm but sure. As she disappeared through the door, he remained in his seat, deep in thought. She had so little, yet she continued to give so much. That kind of selflessness stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in years. In that silence, Richard came to a quiet realization. He had spent too long chasing numbers, profits, and recognition. But Clara had reminded him what truly mattered: compassion. Her quiet strength, unnoticed by many, had changed something in him. And in that moment, he knew things couldn't stay the same. Back at the office, Richard began entrusting Clara with responsibilities far beyond her current role. The kind of work usually given to seasoned professionals, not junior staff. Yet, he saw in her a potential no one else had. Clara, though nervous, rose to each challenge with quiet determination. Every assignment became a test of faith, his in her, and hers in herself. Colleagues whispered. Many questioned why she was being pushed so hard. Some even doubted her capability. But Clara stayed focused. The pressure grew, the work piled up, yet she didn't give up. She worked late into the night, driven by the silent belief that someone finally saw her worth. That was enough to keep her going. Unknown to her, Richard had a vision, a plan bigger than any promotion. He wasn't just testing her skills. He was preparing her for something far greater. The day came for her to present a major project before the board. Clara had spent weeks on it, barely sleeping, making sure every detail was perfect. But standing before the room full of powerful executives made her palms sweat and her voice shake at first. Still she pressed on. She took a deep breath and began. Her voice grew steadier with each word, her confidence building as she explained her findings, laid out her analysis, and defended her conclusions. Graphs, budgets, projections. She handled them all with care and clarity. When she finished, a hush fell over the room. Then came a soft nod of approval from one of the directors. "Very impressive," the man said. The others agreed. Clara felt a small smile rise on her face. She had done it. But Richard remained unreadable. No applause. No obvious praise. Just a look. When the room cleared and she was about to leave, he called her into his office. You did well, he said plainly. But this is only the beginning. You're not done yet. She blinked, unsure. I need more time to prepare you for what's coming, he added, his voice firm but thoughtful. She didn't ask what he meant. She only nodded, trusting that whatever was ahead, she would face it head-on. Time passed, and the quiet transformation continued. Richard worked closely with the board behind closed doors, finalizing something he had long planned. That morning's meeting confirmed it. He sat at his desk, reading through the final papers, a faint smile on his lips. He whispered to himself, thinking of Clara. She gave when she had nothing. She gave when no one watched. I won't let her lack again. He had never felt more certain. Her rise wasn't luck. It was earned. She had proven herself beyond any doubt. Then came the day. A Friday morning. Clara was called into the boardroom without warning. The moment she entered, she felt a shift in the air. Richard stood with the other executives, their expressions serious but welcoming. Her heart pounded. Was she in trouble? Another project? She couldn't tell. Then Richard spoke, his voice calm and clear. Clara, he began, after months of careful review, it is our honor to appoint you as the new Chief Operating Officer of Lawson & Company. Her breath caught in her throat. You will oversee operations, bring our shared vision to life, and help shape this company's future, he continued. You've earned this, not through loud words or empty ambition, but through heart, discipline, and kindness. Clara stood frozen. The COO position. A role she never imagined for herself. It was almost too much to grasp. As part of this new role, Richard added, you will receive a home and an official vehicle. This is just the beginning of what you deserve. Tears pooled in her eyes. She had struggled quietly for so long, never expecting anything, never asking for reward. Her only goal had been to do what she could for others. And yet here she was, standing in a room filled with respect and honor she never dreamed of. She looked at Richard, overwhelmed with emotion. He smiled gently. You reminded me what matters, he said softly. As she wiped away a tear, Clara felt something shift within her. This wasn't just a promotion. It was purpose. She wasn't just going to oversee operations. She was going to create change. Her journey of giving was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. Now, a quiet determination began to take root in Clara's heart. She had no intention of using her new role just to secure her own comfort. Instead, she saw it as an opportunity to uplift others, to reach more people, to give where it mattered most. As she stood there, deeply moved and humbled by the journey that had brought her this far, she realized this wasn't just a personal achievement. It was a responsibility. One that she was ready to carry with purpose. She shared the news of her promotion with her parents, her voice filled with joy and disbelief. When she told them she had been appointed Chief Operating Officer, they were stunned. Her mother, barely holding back tears, spoke with pride. We are so proud of you, my dear. This is more than we ever prayed for. Her father, equally overwhelmed, added, God has lifted you. We always knew he had something great planned for you. We'll come to the city to thank the man who saw your worth. You deserve every blessing coming your way. Hearing their voices filled Clara's heart. She had always pushed through difficult days with their encouragement in mind. Now, knowing they were proud made everything even more meaningful. 5 months passed, and Clara had fully stepped into her new position. Her life looked nothing like it used to. She now lived in a beautiful home and drove her official car. The transformation was undeniable. But even as her world changed, one thing remained untouched: her heart. She hadn't forgotten the people she used to visit every evening. She still carried their faces in her memory, their needs in her thoughts. Silently, without telling anyone, not even Richard, she launched a new initiative, one she funded herself. It was called the Rise Above Disability Empowerment Center. The goal wasn't just to provide meals. She wanted to offer dignity, purpose, and opportunity. The center became a place where people with disabilities could learn practical skills like sewing, painting, carpentry, or basic tech. Clara believed that with the right tools, they could build futures for themselves. She hired qualified teachers and designed the programs to focus on self-sufficiency. To her, it wasn't about charity, it was about empowerment. Still, she didn't seek praise. She never mentioned it at work. Not even once. It was something she kept close, believing that real impact didn't need recognition. Richard, meanwhile, noticed something different about her. She worked with more passion, more focus than ever before, yet there was a quiet intensity in her that puzzled him. He admired her dedication, but he could sense she was carrying something she wasn't ready to share. One afternoon, he called her in. Looking at her thoughtfully, he said, "You've been doing amazing work, Clara. Everyone can see it. But you seem distant lately. Like something's weighing on you. Is there something you want to talk about?" Her heart raced, but she simply smiled. "I'm fine, sir. Just focused on my work and on helping the company grow." He held her gaze for a moment, searching for something behind her words. "You know I'm here, right? If you ever need anything." Clara nodded appreciatively, thankful for his support, though she wasn't ready to share her secret. Richard sensed she was hiding something, but he chose not to push. Still, his curiosity only deepened. As the days passed, Richard found himself thinking about Clara more than he should have. At first, it had been respect, admiration for a kind, hard-working woman. But now it was something more. He looked forward to seeing her each morning, to hearing her voice, to catching glimpses of her smile. His mornings started earlier. His steps often led him past her office even when he had no real reason to be there. He knew he was stepping into dangerous territory. Feelings like these didn't belong in the workplace, especially not between a CEO and his subordinate. But each time he tried to distance himself, he found himself drawn back to her presence. It wasn't just about attraction. There was something deeper. Something that refused to go away. Others in the office had started to notice. The looks. The whispers. The questions. Why was Clara suddenly so close to the boss? Why had she risen so quickly? Some of them couldn't believe it was just talent or hard work. Jealousy grew, especially in one person, Amara. Amara had been with the company for over 6 years, climbing slowly, step by step, only to see Clara, quiet, new and soft-spoken, rise in just over a year. To Amara, it felt like betrayal. She couldn't understand what Clara had that she didn't. Determined to uncover something that could damage Clara, Amara decided she would find a way to bring her down. She started watching Clara, hoping to catch a mistake. When that didn't work, she took a darker turn. One evening, she sat alone in a dim cafe, her mind restless. As her tea cooled beside her, a thought struck. She would hire a private investigator. Someone who could follow Clara and uncover secrets that might be hidden from view. She contacted an old acquaintance who quickly connected her with an investigator. She handed over everything she knew: Clara's address, her schedule, her usual routes. The man promised results, and Amara waited eagerly. 4 days. The investigator followed Clara. At first, he expected to find something unusual, something damaging. But instead, he discovered her secret project. Each evening, she visited a small building tucked away from the main streets, the Rise Above Disability Empowerment Center. He saw her teaching, mentoring, comforting. He watched people smile because of her. There were no scandals, no secrets, just sincere service. He called Amara one evening to report. "She's helping people," he said, almost sounding impressed. "She's not hiding anything." Amara's voice hardened. "That's not the report I wanted. This won't help me at all. No one's that perfect. Keep digging." She ended the call, frustration boiling inside her. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was convinced Clara had to be hiding something. No one could be that good. She ordered the investigator to dig deeper. 2 more weeks passed. He traced Clara's history, but everything came back clean. Her academic background was ordinary. No scandals. No secrets. No double life. Her parents had indeed retired and returned to the village. She had lived a simple life, one filled with quiet struggle and strong values. Amara was livid. There was nothing she could use. No dirt. No scandal. Nothing to tarnish Clara's name. And for the first time, she realized the enemy she thought she had wasn't hiding anything at all. Clara was just genuinely good. But Amara wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. She was convinced that if she couldn't find Clara's weakness, she would have to create one. She had come from a modest background, like so many others, yet managed to rise through hard work, grace, and compassion. But Amara wasn't ready to let go. She was convinced Clara's story was too good to be true. Her jealousy had turned into obsession, and now, she was willing to go to any length. As she paced in her office, frustration pulsed through her. Something had to give. Clara had made no mistakes, had no scandals. But Amara had already decided, if there was no dirt to uncover, she would create one. With desperation tightening its grip on her, Amara twisted the facts she had gathered, shaping them into a lie. The next evening, just as Clara was about to leave work, driving slowly toward the company's exit gate in her official car, something unexpected happened. A crowd of field reporters rushed at her vehicle, their flashes blinding, their microphones pushing in aggressively. "Clara, is it true you stole company funds to start your charity center?" one reporter shouted. "Did your boss, Richard Lawson, know about this secret organization?" Another barked. "Are you misusing Lawson and Company's resources for personal gain?" a woman asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Clara froze behind the wheel, her heart pounding wildly. No one knew about the Rise Above Disability Empowerment Center. Not even Richard. She had kept it private, quietly funding it with her own money and keeping it far from public eyes. And now, in a matter of seconds, everything she'd tried to shield was being dragged into a storm of lies. Employees poured out of the building to witness the commotion. Some stood in confusion. Others whispered among themselves. No one stepped forward. All eyes were fixed on Clara. From his office window, Richard watched the scene unfold, confusion clouding his face. The voices of the reporters carried through the open air. His chest tightened as he heard their accusations. "What are they saying?" he muttered to himself, alarm rising in his voice. Inside the car, Clara could hardly breathe. Her thoughts spiraled, unable to make sense of what was happening. She had only tried to help people. And now, That very act of kindness was being spun into something corrupt. Her hands trembled. Tears welled in her eyes. She had poured her heart into the center, hoping it would bring light to others, and now it was being used to smear her name. She opened the car door slowly and stepped out, unsteady on her feet, tears falling freely down her cheeks. The reporters and employees cleared a path, but none reached out to comfort her. They only watched, curious, confused, and silent. She stood alone, overwhelmed by the betrayal, the lies, the sudden shift from admiration to doubt. "I didn't steal anything," she whispered, barely able to speak. "I only wanted to help. Please, you have to believe me." For a moment, everything fell quiet. The crowd paused, unsure how to respond. The strength in Clara's voice, though soft, carried a truth they couldn't ignore. Still, the damage had begun. From the window, Richard turned away, heart aching. He knew her. He knew what kind of woman she was. And he couldn't believe what he was hearing. But he also knew this wasn't just gossip anymore. This was a full-blown scandal. Something had to be done. The next morning, Richard gathered the board. The room felt heavier than usual. The media had picked up the story, and Clara's name was being linked with theft and misconduct. He stood before them, torn between his responsibility to the company and his loyalty to Clara. Looking down the table, his eyes found hers. She sat quietly, her face pale, her eyes full of pain and confusion. Then, with a heavy heart, he said the words that tore him apart. "Clara, effective immediately, you are suspended from your duties until a formal investigation is concluded." The room was silent. Richard's voice remained calm, but everyone could see the struggle within him. "This isn't a punishment. It's a process we must follow. There has been no conclusion drawn, but we must ensure full transparency." Clara's breath caught. It felt like the ground had slipped beneath her. She had spent every waking moment building her integrity, her reputation, and now it was being stripped away under false pretenses. Her eyes searched Richard's face, looking for reassurance, for belief, but he avoided her gaze. Without a word, she rose from her seat, the suspension letter clutched in her trembling hand. As she walked out, her head down, the sting of disbelief and betrayal sat heavy in her chest. She had trusted Richard. She had believed in him. And now, she was being cast out like a criminal. Over the next few days, Richard called her a few times. He asked how she was doing, checked in quietly, but never brought up the suspension. The silence between them grew, widening into a painful gap. He knew rules had to be followed, but something about the entire situation kept gnawing at him. One afternoon, unable to ignore his instincts any longer, Richard drove to the Rise Above Disability Empowerment Center. He didn't announce himself. He simply stood in the background and watched. Clara was there, teaching, listening, encouraging. Her eyes were tired, but her heart was clearly still full. Disabled individuals surrounded her, learning skills, building confidence, smiling through their struggles. This wasn't a scam. It wasn't a vanity project. It was a lifeline, for them, and clearly for her. Richard's throat tightened. Watching her in that space, seeing her give so much of herself without asking for recognition, moved him in a way he hadn't expected. Tears blurred his vision. He had been wrong, not about her integrity, but about not standing by her when she needed him most. Clara wasn't just a hard-working COO. She was a rare soul, someone whose goodness came without condition. And now she was suffering because of a lie. He left the center that day with a new resolve. He wouldn't let her go through this alone. He would fight, not just to clear her name, but to restore everything she had worked for. Clara had given so much to so many. Now it was time someone gave something back. 3 weeks had passed since Clara's suspension. But Richard Lawson was no longer standing on the sidelines. He was ready to turn the tide. The investigation had finally come to an end, and the truth was out. Clara had been completely cleared, and the person responsible for the conspiracy had been exposed. All the accusations were proven false. Richard Lawson, determined to restore her name and dignity, took immediate steps. He reached out to the media, sharing the real story behind Clara's efforts. The selfless work she had done for the disabled, the passion behind her charity, and her quiet commitment to creating change. Clara, unaware of the progress, remained in the dark, still weighed down by the pain of the past weeks. She didn't know that Richard had already begun to shift the narrative, working tirelessly to clear her name. That evening, Richard invited her to a quiet restaurant. When she arrived, he stood to greet her, pulling out her chair with gentleness and care. As they sat down, he looked at her with eyes full of both relief and remorse. He knew this moment mattered. It was his chance to make things right. "Clara," he began, his tone calm but emotional, "you might have thought I believed the rumors, but I didn't. I needed the truth to come out through the right process, not through speculation or favoritism. The only way to protect your reputation was through complete transparency." Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. The last few weeks had been agonizing. Hearing his words brought a flood of emotion. Richard reached into his jacket and handed her an envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The first document inside was her official reinstatement letter. It was over. She had been vindicated. Her breath caught in her throat. But then she saw a second paper. As she read it, tears rolled down her cheeks. It was a formal letter from the company, commending her for her selfless service to the community. They pledged to provide ongoing financial support to her empowerment center, enabling it to grow and help even more lives. Overwhelmed, Clara looked up and whispered, her voice choked with emotion, "Thank you. Thank you for believing in me." Richard gave her a soft smile. "I've known about your charity for a while," he admitted. "It's why I promoted you. I believed in your vision. But I never imagined you'd build something so powerful. You've opened my eyes to what true leadership and love look like." He paused, his gaze steady. "And Clara, this wasn't just about work. I wanted to see you thrive, to give you more than just a title. And now, watching all you've done, I know something with certainty." Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it slowly, he revealed a sparkling ring. "My angel," he said with heartfelt sincerity, "will you marry me?" Clara gasped, completely caught off guard. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then, as tears streamed down her face, she nodded. Richard stood and pulled her into an embrace. In that quiet restaurant, surrounded by warmth and emotion, a new chapter began for both of them. As they stepped out hand in hand, Clara's phone rang. She answered, curious who it might be. A calm voice greeted her. "Hello, is this Clara Patrick? I'm the publicity secretary for the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. The president watched your story on national television. He would like to meet you in person." Clara stood frozen, struggling to believe what she'd just heard. The president wanted to meet her? She had never imagined anything like this. Her entire goal had been simple: to help. And now, that purpose had brought her national recognition. Richard standing beside her, could see the awe on her face. He squeezed her hand gently, proud beyond words. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Her heart overflowed with joy. The proposal, the president's invitation, it all felt surreal. She picked up her phone and called her mother. The moment her mother answered, Clara couldn't hold back her excitement. "Mom, you won't believe what happened," she exclaimed. "I've been reinstated, and Richard proposed. And the president saw my story on TV. He wants to meet me." Her mother gasped in delight. "Put it on speaker," she said, eager to include Clara's father. Clara did, and soon her father's deep voice joined the conversation. "What's this I'm hearing?" he asked. "The president? And a proposal from your boss?" Clara laughed, her joy filling the room. She told them everything, from the false accusations and her suspension to Richard's support, the proposal, and now the presidential invitation. When she finished, her father's voice came through, steady and full of pride. "You've made us proud, Clara. We always knew you had a great heart. The Bible says, 'Train up a child in the way she should go.' You've honored our prayers." Her mother's voice followed, excited and warm. "So when are you bringing the young man home? We want to meet him before he comes officially. Let us see the man who loves our daughter so much." Clara chuckled through her tears. "Soon, Mom. Very soon." When the call ended, Clara sat for a while, letting the joy of the moment sink in. Everything had changed, her life, her purpose, her future. And yet, it all still felt like the beginning. The next morning, as she arrived at Lawson & Company, she noticed Amara stepping out of the building, her face pale and tight with emotion. Clara immediately remembered what Richard had told her the day before, that Amara had been behind the plot. She had been dismissed. There was no time to dwell. Two men in dark suits stood by the company's entrance, speaking with Richard. Clara recognized the symbols on their car. It was from the presidential villa. Her heart jumped. Richard turned to her and said with quiet seriousness, "They're here to take you. It's time." Clara stepped into the luxurious car, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. Richard followed behind in his own vehicle. As they passed through the gates of the presidential villa, Clara's thoughts raced. What would this meeting bring? When they arrived, she was escorted through large doors, Richard walking beside her. Inside, a quiet yet grand room awaited. At the far end stood the president, smiling as she entered. Cameras flashed. Journalists stood alert. "Welcome, Clara," he said warmly. "I've followed your journey. What you've done for the disabled community is inspiring. You've shown true leadership." He shook her hand and continued, "In recognition of your efforts, I'm awarding you a national honor. But that's not all." The president turned to face the press, then looked back at Clara. "I am nominating you as Minister of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. The Senate will confirm your appointment." Clara stood stunned, struggling to process what she had just heard. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came. Applause erupted throughout the room. Journalists, presidential aides, Richard, they all clapped and cheered. "You are no longer just a part of Lawson & Company," the president said. "You are now a minister of the Federal Republic. You've earned this, not through privilege, but through compassion and hard work." Richard looked at her, his eyes beaming with pride. Clara felt her breath hitch. It was all so much so fast. But as she stood there, she realized something deeper. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about the lives she could now touch on a much larger scale. Her journey had started with simple acts of kindness, and now those acts had turned into something extraordinary. She had been through pain, betrayal, and trials. Yet her faith, her resilience, and her compassion had lifted her to unimaginable heights. This was her calling. As she stood at the threshold of her new life, Clara knew she had a responsibility to uphold. She was no longer just helping the less privileged. She was now a voice, a leader, and a beacon of hope for the entire nation. Let this story be a reminder that no act of kindness goes unnoticed. No matter where you start, what matters is how you choose to rise, and how many people you lift with you. Thank you for being part of Clara's journey. If her story touched you, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next powerful story. And if this moved you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Your support means everything.